Welcome, everybody, back to Hoops HD. This is for the season debut here of our Bracket Rundown podcast. I am your host, Chad Sherwood, joined by up top here a
Bracket.
pair of noted bracketologists, and John Titel and
Thank you.
Rocco Miller, two of
Wait,
the
what?
best bracketologists on the planet, from
What?
my
What?
understanding.
What about me?
And down below me, we got John Stalika, and we got one of the
What
worst
about
bracketologists on the planet, David
what?
Briggs.
No.
Um, this is our bracket rundown show. Now, just real briefly, when the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee meets in early March, they have three jobs, basically. They need to pick the 36 at-large bids. They need to create a seed list ranking all 68 teams, which are the 36 at-large bids and the 32 automatic bids. And then they've got to build a bracket. What we're going to do in about between 45 minutes to an hour tonight is on the air, do the first two of those three steps combined at once, which is pick the at-large teams and rank them 1 through 68. After we are done off air, we're going to create the bracket, which if you look below us, you just totally ruined the show because
Right.
that's where it is.
It's down there.
And,
But
and just pretend you didn't see that. Rewind.
yeah, but that's not. I mean, what you want to hear is the expert analysis from me, and then the opinions of the everybody else, maybe too.
No, David, nobody wants to hear from you. But I'm going to pull up here on the screen the board. Show up?
Yep.
Okay. This is the board we're going to be using tonight. It has a list of 1 through 68. As you can see, it has each seed line has 4 teams in it. So you got the 4 1 seeds, 4 2 seeds. Because of the first 4 with the 2 extra teams that play in game, we have 6 teams on the 12 line.
Which
it
may not turn out.
It may end up on the 11 line, but that's generally where it ends up. So for starting purposes today, that's where we are starting at least.
Yeah.
We also have a little bid counter in the bottom here. As we fill in at-large bids, we'll see that number decrease. When it hits 0, we're done.
Yep. And one more point of emphasis here, Chad. John Titel and Rocco Miller, when they do their brackets, they're trying to guess what the committee will do on Selection Sunday. For the sake of this show, we are not. Like, we are just saying
it's up to each of us how we want to choose our teams tonight.
Yeah, and I kind of go by is if the season were ending today. So
what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each one of you in turn to give me 4 teams at a time. We will debate those 4 teams. I'm going to serve as the arbiter. I'm the only one that did not come in with my own personal list of teams to start things off here. So I'm wide open. I'll let anybody convince me of anything. What I can tell you is whatever David argues for, I'm voting against. Whatever anybody else argues for, I'm voting for.
No, well, I mean, again, then it's going to be wrong.
However, I guess we need some terms, though. David, what's a protected seed? We're going to use that term, right?
Okay, yeah, a protected seed is essentially, in layman's terms, it's a seed of 4 or better. What it actually means is that you are protected from what is basically a home court. So, for instance, Spokane is hosting games. Gonzaga, not the host school, but they have a clear advantage for that area. So if Gonzaga were to pop up on the 13 line, we would not send them to Spokane because they would be matched up with a 4 seed in the round of 64, and the 4 seed is a protected seed. Technically, that's the rule. Technically, that's a little stupid. Practically, what it is that it is a top 4 seed, and you are really playing a team outside the bubble in the round of 64. That's really the only protection that exists.
Yes, and when we say the bubble, what we mean by bubble, those are the teams that are on the borderline, whether they're in or not in.
Yeah.
Protected seeds. Let's start at the top here, though, with the 1 seeds. And Rocco, let me bring you in here. I'm going to give you the honor of telling us who the top 4 teams in the nation is as of right now, January 9th. We're recording this around 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern. There are a few big games scheduled for later on this evening. A few going on right now. They're not going to be considered in. But as of 10 p.m. tonight, at least, who's the top 4 teams of the nation?
Well, yeah, so the top 4 number 1 seeds right now, I just got done writing about this, so good timing. Kansas and Duke, I think, are clearly the top 2. So I'll go with those 2. With Baylor's win in Lubbock, I think that puts them above the other 3 teams I was looking at above, so I'm putting them 3rd. And by the slimmest of slim margins, I will stick with Gonzaga as the 4th.
You put the number one team in the nation, fourth on there. They'll make it the one line. We have a bunch of numbers that are starting to populate here. The first column is the net rating. That's the NCAA's main metric. The second column is KenPom ratings. Third is strength of schedule. Fourth is our colleague Joby Fortson's JNG ratings. Tytel, what do you think about his four teams?
I like them. This is what my bracket had last week, and barring any unforeseen eventualities, it'll probably stay the same next Sunday. Couple things to point out. One, most of these are all these numbers for all four columns are single-digit ones. The strength of schedule for 3 and 4, I assume, is a big reason why Rocco has them 3 and 4 instead of 1 and 2. Additionally, I think it's fascinating to note that we have not mentioned 2 undefeated teams yet, which ordinarily you'd think an undefeated team has to be number 1. But I agree with Rocco that while they're very close, and I assume we'll see them shortly, I don't think they've made the league just yet.
Stalika, do you agree also? Do we have the right 4 teams here? Because if you do, then we can move on.
I agree on the right 4 teams. I would have probably had a little bit of a different order, though. I probably would have had Gonzaga towards the top with Duke and Kansas, and then Baylor rounding out the top 4.
David, is there an argument that Gonzaga should be the number 1 team overall as opposed to just on the one line?
I don't think so. I actually had Duke as the overall number 1. I know that their loss is a little bit more damaging than what you typically see of a 1 seed, but their resume is unbelievable. I mean, at least the good on their resume is really damn good.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up some team sheets here where we look at these at different times tonight here. But you can see on the right there is Duke, a lot more detailed about their schedule and their results. Gonzaga on the left there.
Yeah, and they beat Kansas, they beat Michigan. I mean, again, that's kind of what gives me the reason to think that they should be the number 1 overall is just that win over Kansas away from home.
Well, Rocco, I got to go back to you. You got Kansas 1, Duke 2, but Duke beat Kansas head to head.
Right. So, I mean, the way that the teams are selected in reality is body of work is always talked about, where you played when you got your wins, et cetera. Kansas, big difference, of course, not having a home loss, and Duke's home loss is, of course, the Stephen F. Austin. They have the same amount of Quadrant 1A wins, I believe, and then they also have similar, actually, more 1A wins for Kansas as well. So that actually gives them another notch. And I think more of Duke's meat on their bone is in the third quadrant, which when you're looking at this high on the seed list, it's more of like backup dancers or backup singers versus like the real meat of what you're looking at when comparing. So I like Kansas's profile just a smidge better.
I'm going to agree. I think we should leave this line alone here. I think that's a real strong argument that even though Duke wins head-to-head, that SFA lost. Kansas hasn't done anything close to that bad.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Tytel, let me head over to you.
Be wrong, but that's okay.
Let me head over to you for the 2 line. Give me the next 4 teams.
So I was reviewing my picks. I actually had Butler last Sunday. I think Rocco's correct, though, because Baylor had a huge win against Texas Tech on Tuesday. Regardless, that is to say, let's get Butler in on the 2 line. Let's get the 2 remaining undefeateds on the 2 line as well in either order. And then for my 8th team, I think that there is a lot of room here to go with different teams. As of this second, I think I'll plug in the Spartans, but I can make an argument for several others, and I'll defer to everybody else to make those arguments.
David, let me start with you here. Michigan State, do they belong up here? They've been playing incredibly well. As we record this, they are playing right now. I don't quite have a score update. I'm looking for one. They're actually up 4 on Minnesota. Yeah.
6:32 at the half.
Yeah.
What channel is that game on? This is a great television.
David,
trying to figure out what to watch.
Okay, I'll go to somebody else because David, you're watching TV and not on the podcast. But no, David, seriously, Michigan State. Yeah,
I'll start with a team that I'm not big on. I didn't have Michigan State quite up here because while they're playing certainly like a 2 seed right now, and I think that they're going to ultimately end up that high or maybe higher, I just don't have them there yet. The team that gives me pause is one of the unbeaten teams, and that's Auburn. And I know that I sort of beat up on them a lot last year, and they ended up going to the Final Four and really playing well down the stretch. But when Auburn's profile populates, you have a neutral floor win over a bubble-licious Richmond team, a home court win against an NC State team that probably won't finish and doesn't currently have a winning record on the road. And what I'm seeing is this a top 25 team that has beaten up on top 50 teams, or is it a legitimate top, protected seed? Like on the, I think they're a protected seed, but maybe not as high as the 2 line when compared to, say, West Virginia, Florida State, teams that, while they've lost games, have also lost games to teams that are anyone that's better than Auburn's played, and that have also beaten teams that are a lot better than the teams Auburn has beaten.
Well, Rocco, let me ask you this question here. I'll pull up Florida State, one of the teams you mentioned. Maybe Auburn should be down a line despite being undefeated, and Florida State wins at Florida, wins at Louisville. Maybe they should be up there.
Yeah, interesting topic. So Auburn's undefeated. They can only help with with the resume of the teams they've played. So, and they will have big games coming in the next 2 months. So it's kind of a pointless argument right now. You can put them 2 or 3, I think, and we'll see where they land in a month. But for the time being, I actually would have Auburn down lower because of what you said. Like NC State and Furman, probably the only 2 teams you could argue would be in today's field. NC State, I have barely making it. We'll see what we talk about later on them. Furman as an auto bid. So outside of that, they haven't played any tournament teams.
Wait, Colgate, come on.
Yeah, Colgate. They got 3. Good job. So that's my only bone to pick with Auburn. They're doing their job and they're winning all their games. So if it continues, they'll climb their way up and easily be a 1 seed if that keeps happening. As for Florida State, I do like their resume better than Auburn's. But above them, I actually have Oregon and West Virginia above Florida State.
Well, let me put both those profiles, Oregon, West Virginia. Stalika, let you throw your thoughts in here on these 2-line teams. Should Auburn be coming off, and should maybe Florida State, Oregon, or West Virginia, who should be populating here in a second, beyond?
I think it's interesting when you consider if it were just a matter of Auburn v. Florida State, I would be content to leave the Tigers in here. I would have actually had West Virginia as my final number 2 seed right here when you consider some of their Tier 1 and Tier 2 wins.
Well, Titel, this was your line. Let me go back to you on there. What about this idea? West Virginia should be up here instead of Auburn. Wichita State.
They do have a lot more in Tier 1. I think John makes a very good point. That being said, the 0 in the loss column is the main number I care about when I'm looking at this.
I'll tell you, when I look at this Auburn team, I'll put the back up here on the right side now in a second. I looked at them and I said, well, yeah, they haven't really played anybody when you look at where they played, but still their strength of schedule numbers are way up there. Then you go to West Virginia, number 2 strength of schedule in the nation. So you're blowing out that really high Auburn strength of schedule.
Yeah, one of the things that impressed me about West Virginia is Wichita State, Ohio State neutral at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State not a great team, and neither is Pittsburgh, but they won those in true road games. And then you come over here and you see, I mean, on a merit standpoint, I just don't think Auburn is there yet. I do agree with Rocco. It's more or less an exercise that in early January, eventually they'll either win the games and validate they should be here or lose and move down. So it will ultimately work itself out. But like when you look at the weight that Oregon and in West Virginia and Florida State is lifted, I actually have all 3 of those ahead of Auburn.
Well, let me just quickly take a second here. These team sheets that we're looking at, you see the quality of your wins and losses are divided into 4 different groups: Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and Tier 4. These are the tiers that the NCAA actually uses on their team sheets, and it's based on, for example, Tier 1 is the top 30 teams at home, top 50 teams on neutral court, or top 75 teams on the road. And it goes down from there. There are some teams that are italicized in Tier 1 and 2 and above the line. That's kind of like the top half of Tier 1, the top half of Tier 2, what they call a Tier 1A versus Tier 1B. It's just another way to help differentiate what the really, really good wins, though, are the ones that are italics in Tier 1, and regular type of Tier 1 slightly less. Italics in Tier 2, the next level up, and from there on. But I have to make a decision as the arbiter here, and I'm going to go ahead and push San Diego State and Michigan State up one line here and put West Virginia as the final 4 seed, dropping Auburn down somewhere. They better be on the 3 line, but I'll put them under consideration only for now. I've kind of been convinced on this, and sorry, Titel. At some point you do have to beat somebody that's in this field, and I just don't really think Auburn has beaten anybody that is a solid at-large bid yet, and West Virginia clearly has done it on multiple occasions. Salika, you want to take the 3 line for us?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and stick Auburn in there as my first number 3 seed, and I'll go ahead and add teams like Oregon and Florida State, which have already garnered a few mentions, and I'll actually add another profile out of the Big Ten that I like slightly more than Michigan State. And that's
wait, is it coming? Is it coming?
The Maryland Terrapins.
No, not the right Big Ten profile. Rocco, what do you think about this? I know we've already kind of discussed Auburn, Oregon, and Florida State a lot, but what about Maryland?
Yeah.
Is this where they belong?
I'm not as actually. You know what? Yes, I just moved Maryland up to number 12 today, so we're good. Good job.
What did?
We're good.
Can
David?
we pull up Maryland? I'm not seeing it with them.
They just beat Ohio State really badly the other night, didn't they?
That was what moved them up for me. Yeah, the Ohio State win.
Their only losses are those italicized losses, so they're both quality losses, not bad losses by any means. The Ohio State win, the Marquette win, Illinois, Indiana, teams we're going to be discussing. Those 2 more teams we'll mention at some point tonight.
And also an overall strength of schedule number 3 in the country.
Now, David, I know you're big on road wins, and they have 0 road wins.
Well, that's my really big hang up on them. While Ohio State is good, they beat them at home, and Ohio State hasn't exactly been road warriors.
Titel, what do you think? Do you think Maryland belongs here, or should we talk to somebody else?
I do think they belong here, but we can talk about other teams like a Dayton or like a Louisville or Michigan. The interesting thing about the Terps is that they have this very tough Big Ten schedule, tough road trip at Iowa, at Wisconsin coming up, but single-digit road losses to Tier 1A teams certainly puts them in the conversation here, and I have no problem with them here.
Okay, well, tell you what, let's go ahead and leave them here right now. Let's stick with this line as is, and I'm going to do something I hate to do and let David Griggs give me the next 4 teams.
Okay, so I'm trying to get everybody. Okay, let's get the next 4 teams, and I don't think there's any real reason to debate these because it is just coming from me. It's right, but I didn't think I'd like them as much as I did, but I have Villanova all the way up here, which is higher than I thought that I would. A team that was mentioned earlier that they're already in the field. Sorry. I forgot to delete. I'm deleting them as I go, and I forgot to get them. But I know that they've been hot and cold, but they started off cold, and I really think they're getting hot. I liked their last 2 wins and their win last night against Georgia. I had Kentucky all the way up here.
Okay. Yeah. 2 more. Come on, keep going. You can do this.
And a team that's driving me crazy. The next 2 is Michigan and Ohio State.
So you wouldn't have Dayton here. You wouldn't have Louisville here. You're going Michigan, Ohio State.
Certainly not. Like Dayton, I think Dayton is really good, but just the merit isn't quite there. I don't like when you look at them closely. They do have the big win over Georgia, but I just think when you look at Michigan and Ohio State, they've done a little more.
Titel, you want to respond to this? Is David a little high on some of these teams? I kind of think he is, but
David's a little high often, but I think that Dayton's numbers rank very well across the board with all these teams. Ohio State's numbers are a little better, but they've also been trending down, and Dayton's trending up. I actually had Dayton on the 4 line in my bracket on Sunday, along with Florida State, Louisville, and Michigan. Since we already have Florida State and Michigan in, I think Kentucky's a good argument. I don't know how far Ohio State's going to fall, but I think Dayton and Louisville are at least in the discussion on the 4 line.
All right, well, Salika, how about that? Dayton and Louisville, should one or both those teams be in, and who should be out from this line?
I don't think I would consider either Dayton or Louisville, but okay. I would actually have Kentucky out of here, and I would have Penn State up in protected seed territory because the merit is there for the Nittany Lions this year.
Penn State instead of Kentucky is your choice here.
That is correct. If I'm looking at a team like Penn State, for example, they've already beaten Georgetown on the road. They've beaten Iowa in a quasi-home game.
And who just beat Penn State, Chad? I forget.
Let's see here. Oh, there it is, 72-61. Oh, it was a team from New Jersey, and it wasn't Seton Hall.
And a 1A team at that.
Rocco, though, is Sleeker right? Should Kentucky be out of here? And if so, should it be a Penn State? Should it be Dayton? Should it be somebody else?
Penn Station?
Penn State, should it be Dayton?
So Stalika is right about Kentucky being out of this area.
You're out.
They beat Michigan State at Georgia. I mean, that's
David, we're not talking to you.
Yeah, I mean, for Kentucky, without getting into too many details, obviously the Evansville loss just continues to get uglier, and nobody else has anything close to that. But
well, Rocco, though, I think the committee will give a little bit of credit that Evansville actually had a head coach when that.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, please.
I actually, so I agree with Sleek on that, but my fourth team to replace them would actually be Dayton. And I have it ordered a little different. I have Michigan, Ohio State, Villanova, then Dayton. But that's kind of picky.
I'm actually really big on Dayton. But I mean, Kentucky isn't the team I would move down. It's probably Ohio State, but I actually really
this
like
was
Dayton.
your line, David.
Yeah.
Let's kind of stick with this here. Let's go ahead and knock Kentucky out of here. I think Rocco has convinced me that Dayton is probably the team that, and Titel have both convinced that Dayton is the team that should be in here. I personally think we're a little high on Villanova. I didn't hear too many people ripping into that pick, so I think we will leave that. Go ahead and leave them in there along with Michigan and Ohio State.
Big win at Creighton. That was huge for their profile.
Actually, that was
that really got me. That was really impressive, I thought.
That's a tough place to win.
Yeah.
But Titel, let me go back. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Actually, Rocco, you went first. So, Rocco, let me go back to you for the 5 line here. We've got 3 teams we've mentioned in Kentucky, Louisville, and Penn State that are not in. I don't know if you want to go with one or all of them or if go somewhere else.
It's probably the first time ever that my top 16 has matched this top 16. So it's
wow.
pretty crazy. So the next 4 I have in order are Penn State, who we've talked about. Seton Hall has made a big jump with their road win yesterday. And Louisville then coming next, and Wichita State coming off of a nice win over Memphis tonight.
So you still wouldn't have Kentucky in?
No.
Okay.
I don't get the Kentucky hate here and the Louisville love. Like, Louisville's lost to multiple teams that we have not picked yet.
That's a fair argument. I mean, I'm not in love with Louisville's resume. I thought having them 19 compared to their ranking is pretty significant. But I mean,
I know their ranking is high, but like I actually like Texas Tech more than Louisville.
Yeah, and at this point, I hate to agree with David, but Rocco, Kentucky has beaten Michigan State, who's already in the field, and has beaten Louisville, who you're looking to put in the field above Kentucky as well. I think there's a strong argument here that Kentucky belongs up here. I don't know if it's Louisville that gets dropped down or not, but Titel, what are your thoughts on these 4 picks here and the fact that we have now put 2 teams that lost to Rutgers in the field already?
I love it. I actually have 6. The fact that they're doing this with injured players, some who have come back like Powell, some who have not yet come back like Mahmoud Kalashvili, is really impressive. I like all 4 of these picks. I think that one of the reasons I love doing this show like live on a Thursday is that like Arizona, I think as of the 2nd is a 6. In an hour, they might be a 4. Like they're winning at Oregon in the second half, but that's the great part of live podcasts during live television.
Sleek, I don't think I got your thoughts on this line here. I think you probably want Kentucky in here over Louisville also, though, right?
Yeah, I would probably have Kentucky up there, and I would have actually had Louisville as my first line on the first team on the 6th seed, I should say, because they don't have multiple wins against solid NCAA tournament fields yet as compared to the other 4 teams.
Yeah, and sorry, Rocco, I think that I've heard more love for Kentucky on this line than Louisville on this line. So we're going to go and make that change there.
That's fine.
Seton Hall, Wichita State sticking around. Wichita State, a real nice win tonight over Memphis.
Wichita State is good. They're ranked. They should be ranked higher. This is a very good team. I think that they're one of those teams that's going to be better than their profile.
Titel, you want to hit the 6 line for us?
I don't, but it's my turn, unfortunately. So, as I said, I think my Wildcats get in here.
Okay.
I think Louisville should have gotten in earlier, frankly. They have 4 column numbers that are all in the top 20, while somebody like Penn State only has 1 in the top 20. As far as the other 2, I had teams like Memphis and Colorado. Both of them have been not great recently, shall we say. So I think it's very wide open here, and the committee will correct me if I'm wrong. If I have to pick 2, give me Creighton and give me
Do it.
And I won't do another Big Ten team because that'll just piss you off.
It's that damn St. Bonaventure loss. I know. Go ahead.
I'll go Memphis only because when you factor in not having James Wiseman, like he changes the whole seeding of the team drastically. And I am not going to have any problem with people kicking them out because they are trending downward, but they have a very good excuse for trending downward. And he's not going to be there in March, which I understand too.
Okay. I've got to ask what everybody has against the Beard. I mean, Chris Beard in Texas Tech, they're just – I know that they were slow out of the gate, but, like, I mean, they are really good. They did beat Louisville.
And they did lose to Baylor.
Yeah, I don't force – I mean, they did lose to Baylor at home, but I attribute that to Baylor being exceptionally good.
David, I've got to pull David Griggs' logic on you. I got Texas Tech's profile up there on the right-hand side of the screen. Where's the road victory?
Well, my God, look at
where
what they've
the
done.
Road games.
Look at what
in fact, they beat Louisville. You know what else they've done? Nothing.
They have dominated quadrant
They've dominated Texas Rio Grande Valley. Bethune-Cookman. Powerful win over
Quad
Eastern
4 wins
Illinois.
are so easy, then why doesn't Duke have that many?
Where's my buzzer? Memphis State 2 wins away from home in Quadrant 1. But Rocco,
yes, sir.
Is Memphis the right team here? Should we be going somewhere else? Should we be going Texas Tech, which you're going to have to really sell me on if you want to go Texas Tech here?
I haven't had that. Yeah, Memphis just took a loss. I had them 21 before the game, so I'm okay with keeping them in this range.
Mm-hmm.
Losing at Wichita State, no shame in that. I would say Kentucky belongs here as well. Obviously, they slipped. And then I actually agree with John on Creighton. I'm right there with Creighton. And my 4th team is actually Colorado, the Buffaloes.
So you'd have Colorado in there over one of these teams?
Over Arizona.
Over Arizona.
Yes. And obviously if Arizona wins this game, it all changes. But I like Colorado's resume right this second better than Arizona.
Despite that Oregon State loss, huh?
Yeah, that was tough. And Northern Iowa, I get it.
I think that Northern Iowa is a better team than Oregon State even.
But just beating Dayton and Oregon is big time. And Arizona's got nothing like that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's probably Arizona again. No true road wins yet. Nothing.
I had Arizona down the list. Now that can be rectified in a huge way here in a few minutes.
Salika, let you make a final decision here. Does somebody come out, and is Colorado the team to come in from these 4? Or should we leave the 4 alone?
I would go ahead and take Arizona out for the time being and put Colorado in.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and move the 3 teams up then, and we're going to knock Arizona down a line and have Colorado be the Pac-12 team in on this line. Well, presumably coming down the line, but
they could come back up in a second.
They might come back up. If that game goes final before we're done, we'll definitely adjust for that. I don't think it will. It's still over 10 minutes left, but I guess Slick, I think we're up to you next. So we've got Texas Tech and Arizona under consideration, but give me 4 teams for the 7 line.
Well, here's where I'm going to go ahead and add the Stanford Cardinal, who are struggling a little bit tonight as we speak against Washington. I would also go ahead and add the Houston Cougars in here out of the American. I'll add the –
Did you say Houston? Okay.
Yep. I'll add the hot seat Virginia Cavaliers here. And then this is –
Well, when it comes to Virginia, Tony is on the hot seat.
Yes, he is.
including the loss at Boston College last night, but 2 nights ago. But, go ahead. One more team, Salika.
And then this is where we start to get into the Drek a little bit. And this is where I'm going to go ahead and add St. Mary's.
So you would not have Arizona in yet, even?
Not yet.
Okay. I didn't
Obviously, a result pending tonight.
Well, there is a team that I would have in right about now, and that's Texas. That's Texas Tech.
Well, David, you already made the Texas Tech argument. Let me go to Titel, though, on this idea here. Does Houston belong in this high? And Virginia, St. Mary's, especially with no Arizona, no Texas Tech yet?
It's hard for me to have this conversation without Arizona being involved yet. So,
Yeah, you're going to sell me on that very easily.
I can't say in good conscience, even though you know I'm biased, that each of these four are better than Arizona. That I don't buy.
I could be easily convinced that Arizona is better than all four of these, but kind of, I guess maybe the question more Titel is, which of the four would you bump down off of here if I had to put Arizona on?
I will bump St. Mary's due in great part to their strength of schedule and the fact that they've had some injuries recently, and I think that it is going to be downhill sailing for Randy Bennett.
Yeah, you kind of hate that for them, but
Well, Rocco, St. Mary's, is that the team that should be coming off here to put Arizona in, or let's you put another profile up instead of Arizona's, because I think they're coming in here. Does Houston really belong in this high?
So yeah, good question. So I'm definitely on board with Arizona now, and I'm on board with Texas Tech as well. And then I actually have BYU up here myself. And I'm okay with Houston taking that fourth spot.
Okay, so you wouldn't have Virginia here then.
I don't even have Virginia in, to be fair.
I got them in, but way down.
Well, from what I've heard here, we kind of looks like Virginia and St. Mary's are coming out. David, Arizona and Texas Tech are coming in here. Is that where we're landing?
I believe, yeah, that's about where I would be. I like another team, but I don't have them quite this high. Oklahoma is another team.
All right. Well, let's put Arizona and Texas Tech in there. We knocked out Salika. We knocked out your Houston team. We knocked out St. Mary's. BYU is also under consideration. Rocco, do you really want to sell me that BYU belongs to the 7 line?
Sure. Let's do
it. I'll give you a shot to make that argument.
Yeah, I know they've got the 2 tough losses. The one at Boise, and let's see, there's another unexcusable one. At Utah is actually looking better by the day.
Yeah.
I like the win at Houston. Obviously, the Utah State win's losing luster. Virginia Tech's still a pretty good win, and I don't know, maybe just some of this is based on I've had them in this range and they haven't done anything to lose the ground. So you could actually, now that I'm looking at it closer, you could convince me they can go down a little.
Okay. Yeah, you weren't going to sell me on it, but I wanted to give you the chance there.
I just like what they've done away from home. All of their best wins are away from home.
We are kind of getting into the muck here. I have BYU not this high, but pretty close.
And you're absolutely right, David. That we've reached a point now where
Yoli Childs,
where we're all getting all over the place in terms of teams. Though I think we've been only 1 or 2 teams off, and now we're having 7 or 8 teams discussed per line. But Virginia, St. Mary's, and BYU were all mentioned and bounced for now. But David, how about the 8 line? Who would be your next 4 teams?
Well, I did have BYU on my 8 line. They weren't quite the next team, but we'll mess with the order later. Another team that I had was Oklahoma. And again, this might be kind of high, but there's just kind of some stuff I like about them. And I know that they're kind of all over the place, and they had a rough loss last night, but I did have Whiskey up here. And as far as, don't make me.
Do it.
No, Chet, you don't understand. Don't make me, for the first time ever, say that this team is in the bracket. I mean, in all the years we've been doing it, I don't want to have to say it. I really only had 3 teams on my 8 line because I do not want to be the one that puts them into the field for the first time ever.
Are we doing it, David? It's there.
Actually, I had them. My order was Oklahoma, Rutgers, Whiskey, BYU.
Well, Mr. Titel, shall we discuss a little Rutgers basketball, or how about maybe the other 3 teams here?
For the first time in my life, the answer to that is yes. I mean, when you look at their numbers relation to the 6 line, I'm not saying they're 6, so slow down, Chad. They're pretty favorable to the Colorados and Creightons of the world. The strength of schedule is top 30. The tier 1 compared to Arizona or BYU is like night and day. Respectable loss. Oi, St. Bonnie's. If the St. Bonnie's game was a win, I think we could be talking a top 6 seed for this team. As of now, I suppose 8 is we can talk about it. I was going to put them closer to 10, but it's your team, so break it down.
Yeah, and I mean the big hole in the resume is the road wins. Only the road win at Nebraska. Huge game this weekend actually at Illinois. That will.
If they
be
win
another
that
quad one win, and it's on the road at this point.
Yeah, because Illinois, kind of a bubblish team. If they win that one, I think that their profile looks infinitely better than it already does, and they are maybe 5-6 line range. If they win that one, I know voters don't watch games. Coaches watch their own team when they watch the teams they play against, and writers watch who they cover. But if they win that one, I think that they should be in the rankings.
And winning without their best player, if I understand correctly.
Well, Gio might be back for this game. I don't know. He's day-to-day at this point. But they didn't need him to beat Penn State. They didn't need him to win at Nebraska. So a very deep team here, actually, for the Scarlet Knights. But Rocco, what about this Oklahoma pick? Do they belong in this line? Yeah?
I think so, yeah.
All right.
So, can you go back to the board real quick?
Oh, sure.
And I don't want to be the guy that spoils your moment, Chad, so I'm just going to leave Rutgers where they are.
Oh. No, do it. Do it. Spoil his moment.
You think St. Mary should be there instead, don't you?
Well, no, I'll just put it, let's just say on the under consideration board. I may or may not have this team above Rutgers, but let's go ahead and throw Marquette up there. And I'll just stick with that for now. We'll save the other teams for the next 9 line.
Okay, since there's no way I could ever actually move Rutgers down, and since it was, especially because it was David that put them on this line, we're going to leave this line alone and move back over to you, Rocco.
I woke up this morning not wanting to be the one that put Rutgers.
You're not going to get any sleep tonight, David.
No.
Rocco, why don't you give me the 4-9 seeds? We'd have Virginia, St. Mary's, and Marquette still under consideration, but not yet in.
Okay. I will go Marquette.
Okay.
I will go Iowa. I will go Florida. And I will go Washington.
I was going to say, what about your own team here?
Titel, what do you think about those 4 teams at this point?
Well, there's been some breaking news tonight with Washington that I'll let Rocco get to later. I think these teams are all solid. Sorry, buddy. Florida's been Jekyll and Hyde all year long. I still don't know who they are, so that sounds like the perfect description of a 9 seed. Marquette, God, I wish they would have pulled out that game the other night in overtime. They just couldn't at home. Rough loss. Iowa, I think that sounds good for all 4 of these teams. As far as teams we might want to talk about who have not yet been mentioned, I think we've gotten most of them. Hard to believe the defending champs have not been mentioned in the top 9. I think there's a good argument for them not to be mentioned, especially when you lose to Boston College. But just think about that. This team that has all they do is win 30 games every year, and they're not even bring it. I love it.
That'd be a lot funnier had they beaten Boston College.
Stalico, any other comments on this line here? Do you want to make the case that a St. Mary's may belong over one of these teams here?
No, I think St. Mary's also caught Wisconsin at the right time. So Wisconsin already on the 8 line, I think that's probably going to be their most signature win. Right. A team like a Utah State, for example, they're slipping like a stone. So in that regard, St. Mary's is going to be behind the 8 ball. Virginia's only win against a surefire team at this moment is going to be Virginia Tech, and then Marquette. Yeah, losing to Providence was not advised, although the Friars have been red hot themselves here. So I'm not going to really argue against the teams that are currently listed right here.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to throw a couple other team names up here that we have not yet put in both Arkansas and Xavier, just to throw them under consideration, throw a few other names out there. But I'm going to let Titel give us the 10 line as we move forward here.
I will give Stalico the gift of a 10 seed for Xavier. Even though Arkansas has also been trending downward, especially with the loss to LSU, I believe, the other night, I'd still throw them up here, and I'd put LSU under consideration because they're starting to get a very pretty little resume. As far as a couple other on the 10 line, let's get Virginia in here, almost out of pity than anything else, which is ridiculous, but it's true. And for my fourth, I think that we are starting to get very ugly. We've got BYU, we've got some other teams.
Not St. Mary's yet?
And if so, I think this is a good spot for them. Actually, no, look at LSU's numbers. Get LSU in there, please.
Let's get LSU in there, even above St. Mary's. All right.
Their strength of schedule is 100 points better than St. Mary's.
It is. And the win over Arkansas is huge for them at this point, as well as being the only team to defeat Liberty this year. But Stalika, let me ask you quickly to start what your thoughts are, and then I'll run through the rest of you on this 10 line.
Yeah, if I go based on some of the criteria that I've been saying tonight, I definitely would not have Xavier on the 10 line, and frankly, I'm not sure I would have him in this field, period, here.
Pull up Xavier.
I am doing that right now.
Okay. Sorry to do this to you, Stalika, because it's not like I mean,
You're
I
not sorry, Puppet.
I don't dislike you as much as I dislike Chad, but like, what about them at any point, whether you watch them or look at their profile, indicates that they're a tournament team? Like Virginia Tech, Georgia, LSU. I mean, if you use your imagination, I could make a case for SFA being in ahead of Xavier.
Well,
at least they've done something.
No, I have to buzz him for that, though. I mean, Stephen F. Austin did have one moment in the sun, but they pissed that away with their home loss against Corpus Christi.
Who did I have high?
To be honest. But by the same token, you look at a team like Xavier, they had flashes against TCU, Villanova, despite the loss, and also St. John's. But notice we have not mentioned the Johnnies yet, and there's a decent chance we probably won't mention them.
Well, I'll tell you what, we got this debate here. Rocco, you want to chime in on it? Does Xavier belong on the 10 line? Do they belong in the field at all? You know, somebody else that we should – Arkansas, Virginia, LSU wrong or right?
Yeah, I've got a good dozen or more teams above Xavier right now. But I mean, it's tricky because they haven't done anything horrible, but they just don't – I just don't think they've done enough to get in. So – we'll come back to them if you guys, we'll see how this goes.
I'm going to knock them off here. Why don't you tell me who should go in here? Should St. Mary's be in, or should we go somewhere else?
Yeah, so I do have Arkansas next, and then right after that, I actually have the Hoosiers of Indiana, and then I'm going St. Mary's, and then Illinois comes up with their big road win yesterday.
So Indiana and Illinois, two other teams to be under consideration here. You know, a couple good wins in a row here for the Illini too. Tatel, this was your line. You want to respond to that? That maybe you should have had Indiana and/or Illinois in both some of these teams.
Well, as Arizona's best win as of for the next 4 minutes at least is Illinois. I kind of do want them in, and they do have top 50 numbers across the board. So I could easily ditch St. Mary's and sub them for the Illini.
David, how about that? Illinois should be here.
Yeah, I really like this. I'm actually warming up to this Illinois team quite a bit.
Okay, so Illinois, Arkansas, Virginia, and LSU will be this line. Xavier, Indiana, St. Mary's still under consideration at this point. And let me go. Let's see. I guess we're up to you, Stalika, for the next four teams. This is the 11 line, or at least most of the 11 line.
Give me just a few moments here as I go ahead and make a few marks here. I don't scratch out teams, Puppet, but I do highlight them as we go along here. So St. Mary's, I think we have to get them in the field at some point right
I think
here.
it's about time this time for the Gales.
And if I want to look at teams that are going to be under consideration here,
we got Xavier in Indiana. We've mentioned. We really haven't mentioned anybody else, and we still have 5 at-large spots to fill. So.
Yeah. There's teams that I like. There are teams. Arkansas, we got them.
Indiana did have a nice win against Florida State, but by the same token, they came very close to getting off that line thanks to a loss. Well, not a loss, but they were playing with fire against Northwestern here. I would probably go ahead and throw in, not Xavier, but I would probably go ahead and throw Georgetown in here, at least get them on the 11 line. And
so I got St. Mary's, Georgetown, 2 more.
I would probably go ahead and throw in Virginia Tech and Xavier at this point.
Virginia Tech and Xavier. I don't know where to start. Rocco, I think you made the first. I'll let you take the first shot at this thing here.
No, I just think it's great because we're so all over the map. Like I think all of our lists at this point is just it's a testament to how crazy the bubble is this early in the season.
Oh yeah.
We've got like 55 teams for 20 spots, and it's just you're picking straws. Which one you like the best? We all like different things. Like John likes undefeated teams. I like teams with good wins. Stalika likes teams with close losses. So it'll all pan out later, but it's just funny. So I would actually go Northern Iowa next.
Yeah.
And then VCU. I like right after Northern Iowa. And then I do have LSU in right after VCU.
We already put LSU in actually on the 10 line. So.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. And then I'm good with Georgetown, and then I actually would have NC State as the fourth team.
I should also add, Rocco, if I really do like teams with close losses, can we at least put DePaul under consideration as well?
Hey,
They're
right there. They're right there.
Yeah, I don't know how, like Chad always has a different format for picking how we go about picking the last two, but I want to at least make sure Georgia is discussed. They want it. I mean, I just think they're playing really well.
Okay. Well,
and I want to make sure that East Tennessee State's discussed.
Okay.
Well, we're going to get to all those teams here in a moment. I think we've got 10 teams now for this 11 line, and we've got to somehow break a tie here. Tytel, what are your thoughts about all 10 of these teams, both the 6 under consideration and the 4 that are in there on the 11 line, and where we should be going at this point?
This time last night, I was coming home from watching Georgetown obliterate St. John's. So it's amazing what a difference a day makes. That Virginia Tech strength of schedule stands out as so ugly compared to everybody else except the Zags that I think that we have to have some grave reservations about putting them in. I would rather have the Hoosiers in. I like David's argument for Georgia. And if they'd beaten Kentucky, they'd be way farther up this board. I just think that losing at home, even to a good team, while it's excusable, doesn't help you get in. Maybe St. Mary's is falling far, I thought, because their strength looks bad too. I can live with these 4, but I can make arguments for the others. I saw VCU a weekend ago destroy George Mason on the road. They impressed me a lot, and I think they're only going to get better beating up on 8-10 teams.
I'll tell you what, there's one team that isn't under consideration, but I got Xavier up there. We've got a couple Pac-12 guys. What about USC?
I'm not sold. I saw the Huskies just destroy them on Sunday night, and then they barely scored 40 points. Obviously, that's a one game. It's fine. The body of work's decent. Beating LSU in Staples Center, winning on the road at TCU and Wazoo, but I mean, it's just not there in terms of selection yet for me. If they get another big win or two, I'm there.
All right. David, what are your thoughts here? St. Mary's, Georgetown, Indiana, Xavier. We've got now 7 teams under consideration if I add USC to that list.
I just don't see it at all with Xavier. I'm not that big on Indiana either, but I could make a case for them if I had to. They did beat Florida State, albeit at home, but at least they've done something. I actually like Georgetown. I like St. Mary's for now. I think they're going to have to reprove themselves a little bit with the injuries, but
would you go Northern Iowa or would you go VCU? Those are the
Northern Iowa. Yeah,
and that's kind of where I was leading to is let's hold off on Xavier. There's still a few spots left for them to possibly slip in, but Northern Iowa, which actually would be an auto bid out of the MVC, leaving us with 3 at-large bids remaining. David, you're up. Why don't you give me the next 2 teams here at this point instead of 4?
Okay, I know that they've been all over the place, but I had Virginia Tech and Georgia are my next 2.
Okay, so you would not go East Tennessee State. I know they were mentioned.
I would not. They're very high on – they're very close, though.
I will put them under consideration, at least for you, Rocco. Rocco, do you think that's right, though, Vatech and Georgia?
No.
Okay. Just it's awful, George. David, get rid of it.
It's not awful. It's just I like a lot of other profiles better than those. That's all.
Okay. Well,
like the VCU and we got Northern Iowa. That's good. So my next one's VCU, and then after that, it would be NC State.
That's okay. You like VCU and NC State. Stalika, what do you like for these 2 spots?
Well, I guess as a frame of reference, I'm having to scroll down quite a bit on my screen once I get NC State and USC. Quite frankly, I haven't had them on my board yet, but I am aware that the Trojans do have a win at TCU that's going to be a little bit notable, but not too many other things that I've seen from them at this point.
Okay. Then Titel, do you want to try to break a tie here? Because I've heard, I think, 10 teams from 3 people for 2 spots, and it's.
I mean, I still like Xavier's numbers, and
Okay.
I would throw a wrench in the conversation and seriously consider Liberty. I know that their only big game has been a loss, but it was on the road to a good team. The strength of schedule is horrific. I get that, but great net ranking, great. Joby likes them. Like, I think they're at least under consideration.
Oh, well, if Joby likes them,
Well,
let's go ahead and put them in.
But even if you add a team like Liberty at this point, it's still not going to take an at-large away from the field.
Right.
I'll tell you what. Why don't we do that? Why don't we put Liberty?
Make your job easier.
We'll put Liberty and Georgia in here, and we'll put Vatech back under consideration, leaving us with still 2 spots to fill. And so, Rocco, why don't I go back to you for these last 2 spots, potentially, unless you put East Tennessee State in which case we'll need another team.
Well, there's only 4 teams left in my field, and I've already told you VCU and NC State are the next 2. But if you have my other 2 spots, I actually have Utah in the field, and I have East Tennessee State as the last team in. And we haven't discussed Utah yet.
Okay, so VCU is in. Let me put Utah's profile up here, at least under consideration. So we do have 6 teams under consideration, and we would be done with all the at-large teams at this point. I will go ahead and put East Tennessee State in as well as the auto bid winner from the SoCon. So top team from the SoCon.
They're better than Liberty.
They get in.
Well, they lost to Furman.
They did lose to Furman. I like them better than Furman,
Greensboro.
so a little bit. So I think that I will have them in as the SoCon winner. Just one SoCon team in the field. But let me run through. So we did end up with 5 other teams under consideration. Didn't get in. Titel, let me ask you this. These last few spots, do we have the right teams, or should it be somebody else that we had on the board here?
I like VCU. I saw them. I've not seen enough of East Tennessee State to give you a very scientific analysis. I like NC State. For the last one, I think that I still am leaning Xavier. Maybe that's Big East bias, but leaning.
Okay, so you would have had Xavier in. Stalico, how about you? What's your thoughts on the last 2 spots we filled here?
If we go by this checkpoint, I would say no. If they were to beat Creighton on Saturday at home, I would say yes. But considering this is only Thursday night, I'm going to have to pass on the Musketeers, unfortunately.
I think Xavier ends up being our top team out at this point. It looks like it's probably in that order: Xavier, Vatech, USC, DePaul. USC/DePaul, I guess. I mean, neither one of those kind of got much love at all. I don't think.
I kind of like all those teams better than Xavier, but
Xavier did not make it. But David, is there anybody else that we totally whiffed on that we did not consider also here?
I don't think we whiffed on them. I do think that there's some teams that are playing better now than after kind of getting off of a slow start, and will eventually play their way in. I keep pumping up Alabama. They've won 6 of their last 8. The 2 losses, a 2-point loss to Penn State, who's way in the field, and then an overtime loss at Florida. Not that Florida's good, but a game that they actually kind of blew it. It was more them blowing it than it was them not being good enough to win it. So I like the way the Tide are playing. Another team that, they did get the win at Colorado, can Oregon State, who certainly doesn't have the credentials now, but have they shown signs of being good enough to earn them when they get those chances?
Okay. Let me see here. Who did I not ask here also? Titel, did I get your final thoughts on? I think I did get your final thoughts on this. But anybody wants to jump in here? Any other thoughts on a team that we?
Okay, let me jump in here real quick, and I think we should demonstrate how a scrubbing works, which means we would have to pause this. Now, for us, it might be an hour, but for our viewers, it might only be 10 seconds. Can we do that?
No, we're not going to do that, David. We are doing this as we speak here. We're coming down to the final moments of the Arizona-Oregon game. If Arizona does win the game, obviously they probably should move up, probably a seed line.
Wow.
Free
Overtime.
basketball.
Overtime.
Yeah, and now we're going to overtime.
Okay, so we're definitely not going to wait for that. But as you did see there, I did fill out the 12 line with Stephen F. Austin as the auto bid winner out of the Southland, that huge win at Duke. I'm also going to very quickly, through the magic of computers, fill in the rest of the field as well, from Yale all the way down to Morgan State. They're way at the bottom. But I want to run through each of you now that we have a full field of 68 there, including all those at-large bid winners there in the 13 through 16 line that I added in, and just get your thoughts on this entire field overall, and any other final thoughts on everything we did tonight here. And Salika, let me start with you.
We've talked about checkpoints where I think this is the first time we've ever mentioned Rutgers here. I mean, we've had a couple of mentions of DePaul. Note that there is one team out of the ACC we have not mentioned whatsoever tonight, and that is North Carolina. Could we pull up their numbers, please?
No, we're not doing the worst 68. We're doing the best 68. North Carolina Tar Heels on the left here, Salika. Coming up in a second.
God.
There they are.
I just saw the Gonzaga score. Wow.
Yeah, that is going to be pretty ghastly after the home loss to Pittsburgh and Georgia Tech over the past week. So we are definitely coming into uncharted territory here.
And maybe never happened before territory coming up over this weekend when they host Clemson, who's 0-59 all time in Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
Best chance ever, I think, at this point for Clemson to win this game. Rocco, what about your thoughts on the whole project here?
Yeah, great exercise as always. I appreciated the other opinions. There's so many, ways you can look at this right now. We don't have a lot of information yet. So I thought it was a pretty amazing how consistent like my top 60 seed lines were with the group. And of course, things got crazy at the end. So I enjoyed it. And I think if, my other final thought, Tytel hinted at it earlier, Quade Green, Washington's point guard, academically ineligible, big hit for the Huskies, but so far playing well without him. We'll see if they can stay in the hunt without a McDonald's All-American, going from 3 down to 2 now. So anyway, looking forward to the next one, guys.
Yeah, just a quick note on Green. It technically could be eligible for the NCAA tournament. Not even for the Pac-12.
I wouldn't count on. I would not count on that.
Unless he pulls a James Wiseman type of thing. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, if they get relegated to the NIT, then there's almost a sure chance he'll probably pull a Wiseman at that point and just sit out the rest of the way.
Tytel.
My final thought regarding the bracket is kind of to follow up on Salika and your own team. Like, we're living in a world where Rutgers an 8 seed and Carolina is not in the field. I mean,
never happened before.
I cannot comprehend that. My final thought outside the bracket is a shout out to one of our top seeds on the women's side, the Baylor Lady Bears, going to Storrs, Connecticut tonight, beating the #1 undefeated UConn Huskies by double digits, ending their 98-game home winning streak. We're talking a team that has not lost at home in like many years, and Baylor beat them by double digits. Bravo, Timothy, and your whole team.
They were 1 game away from tying the all-time record, which they also hold. But David, do you want to finish us off for the night?
Just my final thought. Again, we have basically a situation when you look at the protected seeds. You have Gonzaga on the 1 line, San Diego State on the 2, and essentially most of their hay is already in the barn. There's nobody else left on the schedule or that's going to make their resume look any better than what it already is. And I just wonder, even if they continue to win, I think Gonzaga will ultimately be up there, even if they continue to win, just because of where they are in the polls and what the NABC advisory committee would think of them. But San Diego State, if they win out, do they get up to the 1 line? Or
Absolutely.
You think so?
I think there's no doubt.
It's an interesting question, because if they're not there already, then what is it that they would do the rest of the way that would get them there?
It's what the teams above them will do by losing games. Because those 5 teams above them will lose games. Kansas and Baylor will play each other twice.
Yeah. But do you really ding them? It's We'll see what happens.
I see losses here. I see Butler losing games. I see Kansas and or Baylor losing. I think San Diego State does move up. But on that note, I do want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. On behalf of John Titel, Rocco Miller from Bracketeer.org, John Stalika, and David Griggs, I'm Chad Sherwood. You can now look down below us at the finished bracket, see what the matchups are, see who your teams are going to be playing, see if we have Rutgers versus Washington first round. It might happen.
Let's do it.
And we'll talk to you again real soon.